What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's edition of Locked On ACC. Baseball has been a little quiet throughout the season, but apparently when it comes to trips to Omaha, things can get rowdy. Let's talk about why NC State did not get a bid and they will not be taking their talents to the College World Series. Is it true that NC State could be cursed? The fans might have something to say about it. Let's get into it.
Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alrighty, let's get Kenton to the stage. It's always nice. What's up, Kenton? Locked On Wolfpack here. We are going to talk about some rowdy things when it comes to the ACC and baseball world specifically, as we are finding out that the 9 teams selected to the College World Series does not include NC State. More importantly, they're coming off a very tough loss after North Carolina beat them in the ACC Championship. So, Ken, first of all, thanks for being here. So glad to have you.
Always glad to be here. Always glad to make an appearance, especially on the behalf of the old red and white from NC State. But I guess I'm being impartial, and I'm not supposed to be a favorite or rooting for my guys. But there's a lot to be said here, and I'm gonna try to keep your clean rating and mine all in one today.
No doubt about it. Well, there is definitely a lot of thoughts here. Let's first get into the ACC Championship game because, while it was, difficult, it still ended up being a pretty good matchup. 2 unlikely teams headed to face off, North Carolina and North Carolina State. But it was a 9-5 victory for the Tar Heels less than a month after they didn't even know whether they were going to make the NCAA baseball tournament. They needed a big ACC run. And look, they did what they had to do thanks to Vance Honeycutt, who homered twice and drove 5 runs to lead the AFC to UNC into the title game. Now, NC State, unlikely opponent as well. They took their talents throughout the tournament and really showed up and showed out thanks to guys like Tommy White hitting some dingers and what have you. So were you surprised by NC State's presence in the championship game? Let's start there.
In the championship game, not really. I mean, last time NC State won a conference championship in football, men's basketball, or baseball, you were in diapers, and I was a long way away from being born. So
first of all, we didn't need all that. We need to let everybody know that I'm significantly older than you. But okay, proceed.
I mean, I wouldn't say significant. We're in the same generation, but the fact of the matter remains, this NC State falling flat in a conference championship. It shouldn't be surprising. It shouldn't be surprising. And please know that this is why I tell people all the time, if you think that NC State fans are black helicopter people, you haven't met NC State fans, because nobody's tougher on our program than the fans, than the media that covers the team, because we'll be the first ones to tell you they fell flat. What happened in that game was flatly unacceptable. Honeycutt is a baller. He's a player. He's a 2020 guy. I believe the first 2020 guy in UNC history. Good for him. But at the end of the day, our pitching and fielding in that second inning, to say that they left a lot to be desired is the understatement of the century. So, they're at the end of the day, NC State did not show up early in the game. And when we finally decided to bring our bats and bring our gloves, it was too late.
And I think that's always tough when you have the capabilities to be great and then you come up short and you leave, some meat on the bone, because now you're sitting here having the conversation about post tournament play, and NC State finds themselves not among the list of 9 ACC teams that were selected for the championship field. There were 9 out of 64 who are going to take their talents to hopefully get to the College World Series and do all that jazz. But of course, ACC champion North Carolina will be a regional host. Then you've got Virginia Tech, Louisville, Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Virginia, and Wake Forest, who were also announced. Now you look at that list and you look at people who NC State defeated, and you say to yourself, how can NC State have pulled off such a great tournament run and then fall up short when it comes to the entire national championship stage? So what were your thoughts when you did not hear NC State's name called for a championship run?
You know, there's there is a way to predict how heavily a volcano is going to explode, and it's based on like how often it erupts and how often it's due to erupt. And the longer it takes past the time that it's due, that's why people are terrified of like, oh my God, Yellowstone is going to erupt one day and it's going to take out half the country with it.
Mm.
NC State, when it's finally time for them to get the championships and get the things in football, basketball, baseball, it's going to be something like we haven't seen, because I don't know what NC State did to the NCAA. I don't know. I don't. And again, all the things that have happened to NC State that are in their control that they did poorly, I would not, I don't. Last year, I didn't say anybody else was the reason that that team lost to Mississippi State, or why they lost to Wake Forest, or why they lost to Miami. I put that squarely on NC State football and say, hey, y'all got to be better. Last year in basketball, I didn't put that on anybody. This is what it is. The roster was composed. I was composed. We were set up in a way that one injury was going to be fatal to us, and we got that one injury plus some. Mm-hmm. So in this moment, this feels a lot like the NC State women's basketball team being the 1 seed in Bridgeport. It feels a lot like that, but maybe even worse, because everybody had us pegged as a 2 seed. That means that we were supposed to be hosting a regional, according to, or we were supposed to be at least near our home in a regional at bare minimum here. And, not a super regional, but at least a regional. And with that being said, to then go forward and say, oh, LOL, JK, y'all aren't in. This isn't about NC State fans. This isn't about NC State media. This isn't about what folks who read and white believe. This is about folks who get paid to cover college baseball for a living, all saying that there's a 2 seed. They're going to be on the 2 line. Don't worry about it.
And then they ended up saying that 64 other teams are better than you, and you didn't quite make it.
Exactly. And it is, people are looking around like, well, what's the explanation? And it was, well, they didn't have the strength of schedule, even though they had more quad 1 wins and a better record against quad 1 than Eastern Carolina, or than what was that other team? I want to say it was like it wasn't Boulder, it was like Northern Colorado or something like that. I can't remember this team. Grand Canyon, behind the team in RPI. You ask yourself, again, it's a lot like when the women were sent to Bridgeport, and so was UConn. And you ask yourself, how did this happen? And the explanation given by the committee doesn't line up. And again, I simply implore people, if you think it's funny because it's NC State, more power to you. More power to you. How long is it till your team is on the chopping block? Because if you're not a blue blood, and even some that are blue bloods, guess what? You may not be the blue blood that you think you are anymore. And if your team is on the chopping block and your team ends up getting this type of treatment, I'll be there to bat for you, even though, a lot of people are liking to poke fun and pick at NC State right now.
Well, I don't even think it's to the point where people are poking fun. I think it's like a little bit concerning. If I'm coming from a lens of, it's very odd, it's a little suspicious that NC State keeps getting the wool pulled over their eyes when it comes to all these post-tournament play situations. Especially you think about, again, the girls when they had to go through Bridgeport playing UConn. It was essentially a home game for UConn. You look at NC State in the Holiday Bowl, and they weren't able to play the Holiday Bowl because UCLA popped positive and waited, 48 hours before they ended up, canceling the game. Mm-hmm. And they were out there in San Diego for a week. And you also had, not the basketball team. They just were by themselves, the men's team. But when you now have baseball team last season who got the COVID and they got taken away from playing in the College World Series, semi-championship game. And it was against Mississippi State and all of these things. You take away their opportunity. So to go from almost playing for the whole kit and caboodle to not even making the tournament, I would just love to know, how coach is feeling and how do you even reconcile and try to make something out of a season that you did halfway decent. Of course, it wasn't perfect. You lost a lot of people to the draft last year, but now you're finding yourself in a situation where Is it just a big FU to NC State athletics? I would love to get insight there from Boo Corrigan because I'm sure he's stressing himself the hell out. But first, I want to talk about our partners at BetOnline, who continue to be the number one source for all of your sports betting needs. At this point, we need to bet, can NC State ever get to a championship game and actually have some fair competition and maybe win the whole thing? And that is certainly a bet that I would be worth wagering for. BetOnline definitely has all of the sports information, live betting, playoffs, esports, and anything that you need. I'm sure you checked out the basketball playoffs, the Game 7, Major League Baseball scores, fight, and even next season's NFL futures. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. So we're rolling with Kenton Gibbs of Locked On Wolfpack. We're talking about the curse of NC State that may or may not exist. I'm starting to feel like it's a curse. I don't know if someone from the NCAA tournament, are on committees who just say, like, I don't care what you do, NC State can just never participate, or they have to participate against all odds, whatever the story may be. But I just find it like it has to be challenging to be Boot Corrigan. Like my guy is probably sitting there smoking Newports. Like, when are we ever going to get our rightful, key to the throne?
I feel like Boo Corrigan is either Virginia Slim type of guy or a Black and Mild. I feel like he's one of the two.
No, Boo Corrigan is not a Black and Mild. He's definitely a Marlboro man.
It's always the people you don't expect who pop out with the Black and Milds. But let me tell you something. Now, I want to give you a quote from Benedict Cumberbatch. Because everybody knows Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange right now, but he also played another very influential role, and it was as Sherlock Holmes. And one of his family members said to him, "What do we say about coincidence?" And Sherlock's answer was, "The universe is rarely so lazy." Now, what does that mean? Coincidences are when there's one coincidence or two things that kind of line up, possibly. But as you start to see more and more things arise that all overlap, a very interesting thing about the head of the committee for the baseball tournament as well as the women's basketball tournament is they both have very strong ties to the ACC. The head of the baseball tournament, the head of baseball tournament selection committee is a Wake Forest grad who spent, I want to say, nearly a decade there. The head of the women's tournament selection was the AD less than 50 miles away from NC State, Miss Nina King over at Duke. So the universe is rarely so lazy. The universe is rarely so lazy as to give us a bunch of things that kind of overlap and look weird. But with that being said,
before you go into that, why do you feel like they would even care as much or even enough to want to spoil NC State's party? Because to me, it's like, NC State is not irrelevant. I'm not saying that by any means. But if you're going to be biased or partial, why would you do it? Why NC State? I guess I'm asking.
So, all right. I am not going to speculate as to what the reasons are, because there are a myriad of reasons that one could conjure up if I was grasping for straws or grasping at nothing.
Sure.
But what I will say is this: it is a shame that NC State didn't make it in, but 9 teams out of the conference did. You know what I mean? And those 9 teams, it feels like this is the ACC is making it clear and making it known that as far as baseball goes, it's them, the SEC, and everybody else. And, in a conference like this, especially with what we had this year, a very young team, you lose your ace, Sam Highfield, 2 weeks into the season, second team All-American guy. And so everybody else in the rotation has to get pushed up a notch or two. And to have the type of season they did, it's either way, I think that they met expectations of anybody who's reasonable. I think that, anybody who is being logical and not letting their emotions get the best of them, I think that this is about what you'd expect from this team. But, again, that's a very hollow consolation prize to an actual shot at going to win it all, because I always say nobody circles the wagons like Elliot David. And he showed it again. A team that got swept coming into the ACC tournament, a team that went from, and granted, the race was extremely tight in ACC. The difference between the 3 seed and the 10 seed was literally last weekend's series. So NC State got swept by Wake Forest, so that's how things played out. They ended up the 10. Okay, but with that being said, this team, for them to be where they were with all things considered, you really can't ask for too much more. And obviously, you'd never want to see mental errors. You never want to see a ton of errors on the team, and that being a reason that you lost a lot of games. But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with young guys, when you're dealing with transfers, and the team needs time to gel, you're going to expect to see that. So, that team, they played their hearts out. They gave everything that they had, and at the end of the day, sometimes you don't get the result that you want. But to see this team not get a bid into the tournament, interesting to say the least.
Well, I feel like we just need Keith Morrison, Lester Holt. What's that guy from Outside the Lines? Bob.
Bob Olney.
We need him on the case. We should actually do a Locked On investigative journalism kind of episode where we're just putting the pieces together and sort of aligning as to why NC State's been screwed so much. Like at this point, it's not even funny. It's not even like one of those things where it's like, oh, ha, NC State gets dumped on. Like it's sad because if you're any type of athlete, people who bust their tail to, try and achieve the championship that they have worked so hard for. So to me, I don't even look at it as a rivalry thing. It's just like it's a sad sight that it just seems like the cards never align. But, this is a great segue and question for going into this season. We have a lot of high hopes about NC State football. Everyone's talking about how NC State 10 of 11 starters on defense. They got Devin Leary. You got some really good receivers back there. You got a decent running back system. Your strength training at the wazoo. All the things to be great. Screw a bowl game. We're talking New Year's 6. We're talking college football playoff, maybe. I'm getting a little nervous. I feel like the hype is going to be the ultimate demise. And if it does NC State have a valid case to be like, we're the most screwed team in all of college athletics when it comes to NCAA?
I mean, again, I'm a firm believer that you take care of what you can take care of, and the rest you let it fall where it may. Now, with that being said, taking care of what you have to take care of, if you're a team that has the talent, has the experience, has all the things that NC State has as far as football goes for this upcoming season, if they can't get it done, I'm fairly certain I'm going to be looking at them and saying, hey, you just didn't get it done. Again, I don't –
you're thinking it's all on NC State. It's not going to be anybody else.
Yeah.
When you talk about committees, let's say NC State does everything they need to do. You talk about committees. NC State will not get screwed in the end.
Oh, let me let you in on the secret. Let me let you in on the secret now. In terms of football, there has never, not once, not one time in the very short history, and I mean the history is shorter than my hair. You can see it. Ain't much going on there. But in the very short history of the college football playoff, there has not been a single undefeated Power 5 team to miss the playoffs. There's only been about 3 one-loss Power 5 teams to miss the playoffs. NC State, if you go out and do what you're supposed to do, you know what I mean? Like there can't you and I'll tell you this, as NC State, you're returning 10 of your 11 starters on defense. You're returning a quarterback that Dorn believes is the best in the nation. You're returning a wide receiver core that I believe is massively underrated. At this point in time, if you take care of business and hold court, if you can get just something out of that backfield, if you can get 1,000 to 1,200 yards of production out of that backfield, maybe anything over that, I think you're playing with the church's money. Once you get up to about 1,500 yards of production out of this backfield, you're playing with the church's money. If you can get that out of this team, I don't see why y'all couldn't, why they couldn't make it happen. So the thought at that point becomes, do you handle your business in the ACC Championship game? Because again, there is momentum there. There is momentum.
But do you think that NC State, anybody who's on a committee just needs any reason to not give NC State the advantage? Like they didn't win the ACC Championship game. Nope. Absolutely. They lost to a Carolina team that didn't have a great season, or just throwing things out there. Like if they have any reason.
Yes, but that's the thing. Again, I take this back to Cass Tech up in Detroit, Michigan. Okay, our coach Thomas Wilcher, love him to death. That's my guy right there. I hope you listen. I know he's listening. That's he listens to everything I do. But let me tell you something. He told us going into the state playoffs. He said they're going to call a touchdown back in every game. every single game in the state playoffs. They're going to call a touchdown back. Y'all are from the city. Y'all are poor. They do not want y'all to get a ring. And he was right. Every single game, there was at least one touchdown call back. Every single game. But we had to go out there and leave, no doubt about it. Is it fair? No. Is it right? No. Is it logical? No. No, it's not. It's not. But guess what? NC State, you've got to leave, no doubt. You've got to leave not a slither of an inkling, of a hope, of an iota, of just a meager respect, glimpse of they don't belong. Because if that happens, then it will be determined that you don't belong. Because a large part of what the committee does, let's just be honest, a large part of the committee is based off of what your name is. We saw this plenty of times. We've seen plenty of teams that did not win their conference championship advance to the playoffs because they were of the SEC. Not to say that they weren't the best team, but to me, if you're going to do that, then how do you keep out an undefeated group of 5 team? They could not do anything more than what they were asked to do. You can only play who's in front of you, and UCF beat every team that was in front of them by about I want to say their average margin of victory the year that they didn't get in was like 23 or 25 points. And people were saying, well, it wasn't enough. I don't care who you are playing. I don't care who you're playing. If you're playing a bunch of FBS teams and you're winning by that type of margin, even if you gave that schedule to every team in the group of 5 or the Power 5, they wouldn't be winning by that margin. So the reality is if NC State leaves a reason for themselves to not be included, the NCAA will take it. That's just the reality. That's what they got to do. They got to go in there. But I would tell them my advice at that point would be to not play tight and know that I have to be perfect. You got to be you. You got to be the best version of you. Go out there and be the best version of you. Don't worry about the playoff. The playoff is way, way off. Go out there and be 1-0 this week, and then 1-0 the next week. And then ECU fans are talking real crazy right now. And I'm going to just tell you, I hope that Dave Dorton is a better person than me. Because me personally, we would be up 60 points and I'll still be bomb them. Y'all know what to do. Go deep. Do not, because you saw what happened with Miami and Notre Dame in the Catholics versus convicts. When Miami ran up the score, what did Digger Phelps do? He left his boys out there. They was up. He beat them by, what was it, like double the score that Miami beat them up? If I'm doing, I don't care that we beat them twice. We beat them twice, but they talking crazy, and they got into the tournament and we didn't. Yeah, don't worry about it. Roll it. The entire game. The ones coming out in the middle of the fourth, roll it.
And for context, for those who don't know, ECU made the NCAA tournament for baseball, and they play NC State this season for football.
Yes, and they lost to NC State in both games that they played for baseball as well. So That's why I said you can't really go off the score and say, oh, we're going to double up. I mean, we won both games, but we didn't get in the tournament. ECU fans are talking a lot, so don't worry about it, Pirates. Don't worry. We got something for you. Don't worry. But again, Dave's probably a better person than me, and he's not going to do that. But me, Kenton Gibbs, let me tell you something now. Roll it.
Help us, Father. All right. So there was a lot of good conversation, not only around, the baseball and all the exciting things that are happening for the ACC, but as well, we had lacrosse women's championship game. We had Boston College and North Carolina face off. North Carolina coming out on top despite Charlotte North's, vigilant effort. She's one of the best to ever play women's lacrosse out of there for the Eagles, but it was a great day. It was a great weekend for North Carolina. The Tar Heels not even going to hold anybody because I think, we call ourselves the University of National Champions. And I will say, it's really rare that you see schools good at damn near every sport. And we're talking like fencing, field hockey, lacrosse, swimming, like it's all the other ones. And then like playing for national championship in basketball. And, I don't even have time for football. But other than that, I'm very excited for the team and the university to have some more national championships. Maybe one day, before I'm old and gray, we can talk about Carolina football, but don't see it happening anytime soon. But you got to take the victories where you can get them. Sometimes you just have to have, it's kind of like NC State. You got the wrestling, amazing. You got the swimming, amazing. You got to take the championships where you can get them.
Absolutely. And by the way, I want to talk about this for just a quick second. I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're almost out here, but it is a special type of stupidity and misogyny for people to even like hold great weight in this streak because of the fact that NC State is one of the most storied programs, women's basketball wise, in all of the country, let alone
What streak are you talking about?
South. The 30 years of, I believe it was 1992, was the last time NC State won a conference championship in baseball, football, men's basketball.
Mhm.
It is a special type of misogyny and stupidity to not count women's basketball because, I mean, why not? Why not? I'll tell you this much. The NC State UConn women's basketball game was one of the highest rated women's basketball games ever. Do you think any baseball game, any college baseball game in the history of college baseball has beat it?
No.
I'll give you a good guess. No. There you go. That's your answer. So, you know, I think it's very interesting how, like, oh, women's basketball doesn't count. And people say, oh, women's basketball school. You guys are women's Yeah, we are. What about it? 3-time champs. What about it?
I mean, UConn takes that they have a lot of pride in being a women's basketball program. Tennessee, all the like. Like, I don't understand what's such a knock on it.
You know, I think it's very interesting that, you know, it's that is said to be like an affront to the school or something. Like, no, we have a very storied program from K.Yao up to Coach Moore, up to Alyssa Cunane, up to Raina Perez, up to Kayla Jones and Kai Crutchfield. What about it?
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina is sitting here turning themselves into a women's basketball school as well. So I think at the end of the day, if you got great programs, you better love on them while you can, because we all know that it's hard to come by when it comes to championships. Streaks are difficult. I don't care what anybody says. It's hard to win once, let alone try and come back and do it. So whenever you do have a program that has those opportunities, I think it's all well and good. But for the ACC, I feel like after Clemson, every year, damn near in football, it's going to be, you know, who wants it more. I think it's not going to be a consistent thing. I think you're going to have, because we're getting better, you're going to have more programs, you know, really vying for an opportunity for a championship. I don't think we'll see a 6-year streak like we used to.
You know, it's tough to call those things. It's really tough to call them because they kind of just pop up overnight and everybody believes that things are going to work a certain way. Like, everybody just knew that Willie Taggart was going to work out great at Florida State. Not so much, right?
Well, yeah, I feel like the ACC is slightly flukish and like not flukish, but maybe it's everyone's getting more talented, but it's almost like pops off. Who's going to have a pop off good year? Like, who expected Pitt to come off and win an ACC championship last season?
You know, I don't think that anybody expected them to win the ACC outright, but I don't think anybody expected DJ to be as bad as he was last year. Like, that's a large part. I don't think, and not only DJ being bad, the injuries as well to Clemson were something that we had not seen.
But you also have to give credit to NC State for making a strong improvement. You got to give credit for, you know, other teams. Yeah, Wake Forest having an undefeated season, damn near. You know, you got to give credit where it's due. And I think going into this season, there's still a lot to be excited about. Like, so when you look at I say all that to say, when you look at the grand scheme of just the ACC, I think there's just a plethora of really good teams out there vying for opportunities. And it sucks bringing it on home to baseball that you have 9 teams going and you don't have NC State, you know, out of 64 teams. I'm not buying it that they weren't good enough. Like, I'm not buying it.
Again, none of it makes sense because if you look at it from nearly every angle, if you look at it from RPI, we were 33rd in the nation. If you look at it from quad 1 wins, we had many more than many teams that made the tournament and weren't automatic bids. If you look at who's primetime TV, name me a more exciting player in this country to watch that didn't get an automatic bid than one Thomas Latrell White. I don't know if his middle name is Latrell.
I doubt it is.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
Definitely probably David or something.
Yeah,
but okay.
Probably.
Yeah, right.
But you get the point. You know I like making up middle names.
It's okay.
But as I said, Thomas Latrell White, number 47 in the red and white. That is a bad boy. Every time
did he break an NCAA record for home runs?
NCAA freshman record for home runs. Every time.
How do you not put that person? Okay, you know, it's just not the math ain't mathing.
Again, it's a very perplexing situation, and again, it is not just the Wolfpack fans, right? Because, like, for example, I believe our women's basketball team didn't make the tournament. I want to say it was 2016. 2015, one of those years. And they were really good. They were really close. They were right on the cusp. Everybody said that is a team that should probably make it in. They might be last four in, or they might be right above the last four in. They didn't make it. And Wolfpack Nation was not in the uproar because we knew this team is really close to the bubble. It makes sense. This NC State baseball team, this ain't that, and that ain't this. Like, this NC State baseball team was allegedly on the bubble going into the tournament. And then the tournament officials say, well, we're weighing series, not games. Well, then what's the point of the tournament? What's the point of the tournament being games if you're only weighing the series? So, again, the universe is really so lazy. And when you listen to somebody's explanation of something and it contradicts itself, right? It's like if your partner says, hey, it's not you, it's me. I want somebody who will give me more stability. And then they go off and date somebody who is the wildest, most erratic person in the world. And you're like, that's not what you said. That's not, or, they say, oh, I want somebody who's excited, and they date the accountant that, them eating saltine crackers with a bit of pepper on it is like, ooh, spicy. Like, that's, you get what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't, at the end of the day, this is a situation where, again, when these committees speak about NC State, it's always double talk. It's always contradicting themselves within two sentences, i.e. Nina King saying we wanted to avoid rematches, even though two teams that NC State had already played were the 8 and 9 seed, despite them being the 1 seed, which meant they were guaranteed a rematch if they beat the 16 seed. So, stuff like that is just, when these committees speak in terms of NC State, it literally never adds up. You can literally track it and say, wait a minute, NC State's strength of schedule wasn't good enough, but Grand Canyon's was? That's what you're telling me right now? Okay. If that's the world that we're living in, sure, I'll attempt to live in it with you, but it's not reality.
No doubt about it. All right. Well, it's great to have you, Kenton, as always, to have this conversation. It sucks that it has to be such a negative towards NC State athletics, but hopefully they'll figure out how to have some spark as we head into the summer. We've got a lot of good things to talk about when it comes to all of the ACC. Make sure you guys also listen to the rest of the conference shows from around the Locked On Podcast Network and all the guys who have their specific local shows. You got Miami, you got Duke, you've got Boston College, you got Florida State, you have Syracuse, you got NC State, all the you got Pitt, you got Louisville. We're almost getting the group together. I feel like Miami, you got to get the band. We're almost there. So we need Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, and a couple more. We'll be good to go. A little bit of Virginia action, and I'll feel good about it. So make sure you check out all those guys. Locked On NBA Draft. We know June 1st is a big day. So where some of these guys return or whether they come back or return or stay in the NBA. It's a whole interesting process that I'm sure Kenton is sweating just a little bit, but we'll have that conversation on a different show. Thank you guys again, and make sure that you check out all of the Locked On ACC episodes on YouTube and listen wherever you listen to podcasts. For Candace Cooper and Kenton Gibbs, until next time.